Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 21 of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This is the first show of the new year, as it'll be coming out on Monday. So, Happy New Year, I guess. Even though in, 18 days? Well, when it comes out, it'll be 18 days. We have the inauguration of Chitler, our orange overlord, the Trumpster. So, not too thrilled about that. A little scared. A little, I don't know, just how to put it. Just, apprehensive would be an understatement. So, but you know what we gotta do? We gotta fight. We gotta, fight them every step of the way on social issues and everything else. So, just be ready, y'all, because it's going to be a rough 4 years if we make it that long. So, I really didn't have anything for the pre-ramble. The only thing I saw that there was a terrorist attack. Well, they say it's a terrorist attack in Turkey, in a nightclub in Istanbul. I believe the latest count was 35 people dead. I don't know. I haven't heard if anybody has claimed responsibility yet, but regardless, it's a fucking tragedy, regardless of where it is. Anytime there's innocent lives involved, we got a problem, and this is just going to get worse, I think. And of course, Turkey is in a fight with the Kurdish. Of course, the Kurdish and the Turks have always had issues because the Turks don't want the Kurds to get their own state, but the Kurds want to join up with the Kurdistan and Iraq. I don't know. Of course, the main problem is oil. It's oil. That's what it is. I mean, if we want to be honest about it, because the oil fields, the homeland that they want would have a bunch of oil, and Turkey would not get it anymore, so they're not going to let that happen. I'm looking at New York Times here. At least 24 of the people were killed were foreigners, including Belgium, France, India, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Saudi Arabia, and Tunisia residents. 69 people are hospitalized for in critical condition, and of course, like I said, at least 39 people have been killed. No one's claimed responsibility yet, but I'm sure Islamic State. It's either Islamic State. It's one or the other. Maybe Islamic State. Who knows? Of course, and there was that Turkey attack in Turkey against they assassinated the foreign minister. Was it the Russian foreign minister? I believe. I don't remember. I think it was foreign minister, and he was just straight up assassinated by an off-duty. Well, I don't know if he was off-duty cop, Turkish cop, for the shit that has been happening in Syria. So it's a rough world, man. I'm not seeing many bright sides right now, to be honest with you. So, Happy New Year. Let's hope we can get through it okay. On the palaver this week, I have a guy I've known for a while but met briefly at ReasonCon. His name is Bryce Blankenagel, and he is, of course, the host of Naked Mormonism, but we talk about politics because he gets tired of talking about that stuff on his show, and he kind of wants to let loose a little bit. I thought it was a good conversation. We had some minor disagreements, but I thought it came out well. So stay tuned and listen. I hope you all enjoy it.
Hey everybody, this is X.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Felicia. We're the Utah Outcasts. 3 out, unashamed, and active atheists living in Utah.
And we are personally inviting you to let us love your ears each and every week.
As we take the news, current events, and pop culture and give it a little twist.
A love twist, with consent.
And we'll be joined each week by a special guest to tell us what makes them an outcast like us.
Come find us.
The Utah Outcasts.
On podhell.com, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play,
Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
And on utahoutcast.com.
We finally bought that domain off the kids handing out mixtapes in the mall.
Come be an outcast with us.
Take care of yourselves out there.
Bonne nuit.
And you're welcome.
I'm Carly Sturgis, the host of the Token Skeptic Podcast. Since 2006, I've been interviewing people from around the world. Scientists, comedians, artists, and activists. And some of them you might even recognize.
the powers of the placebo are so strong that maybe it's wrong of us to mock.
And we happened to be in London around the time because we were shooting for the war and everything, and we basically made our own little sign, entreating the London commuters to bow down to the Dark Lord Satan, just to try and even out.
Some of them you might like to get to know better after hearing them on the show.
Reading into it, for years, I've been interested in the concept of science philosophy and how pseudoscience works. And
it's then very easy for people to just, throw us away and say, well, you don't have a heart, or you're closed-minded, or, and so...
And the origin of the universe and the meaning of life and that kind of thing, because...
it's very real-life music, a lot of real experiences, a lot of vulnerable topics, but at the same time, some very silly things. Like one song is actually about Windows Vista.
I'm wondering how I can finish this off now.
Let's break something.
Let's break something. What the hell?
Well, we'll finish it off kind of like Good News Week does.
The Token Skeptic Podcast is a fortnightly online interview show that takes a slightly more skeptical look at the world around us. Head to tokenskeptic.org.
Welcome to the palaver here on the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week I had with me a gentleman who's one of the nicest guys in podcasting, and he runs a podcast called Naked Mormonism, which is a serial Mormonism podcast. He's super sexy and has a great voice. So welcome, Bryce Blankenagel. Did I get that name right?
Damn it, Chris. You should have recorded the first one. We should have gone with that introduction. I like that one a lot more, but now you've built me up to sound like an actual person that knows what I'm doing. And sexy, I don't fit any of what you just said, except for I'm the host of Naked Mormonism. But yes, hi Chris, it's nice to talk to you, man.
Yeah, we actually met at RecentCon a couple of years ago, and I just never got around to doing anything, I guess. So it's good to talk to you again.
Well, likewise, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we to say that we met at RecentCon pretty much sums it up. I mean, we were like, hey, I'm Chris. Oh, hey, I'm Bryce. Nice to meet you. All right, see ya. That was pretty much it. I didn't really hang out with you much, and I probably should have, but yeah, dude.
Somebody should have.
That's all to be remediated in April of 2017, from what I understand.
Yes, RecentCon Redemption. I'll be there, yeah. So I've already got a buddy who won't let me drink too much, so should be in good shape.
Right on, right on. Those are good people to have around, especially when you're surrounded by a bunch of drunken atheists. We get off the hook. But, I mean, RecentCon is just that way. It's essentially the atheist frat party. It's awesome.
Yeah. So even if you're not in the area, you need to go check it out. Figure a way to get there. I don't know. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what your podcast is about?
Yeah. You said it perfectly. Serial Mormon History Podcast. That's what I call it, because episode 1, let me just say I wanted to learn about Mormon history, so I decided to start a podcast on it and do the research as I go, essentially. And the episode 1 starts with the birth of Joseph Smith, essentially, because, if you're going to talk Mormonism, where else do you start? Except with Joseph Smith. So, and then episode 2 introduces his wife-to-be, and episode 3 introduces Martin Harris, as South Park fans might know him, dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. And then it just progresses chronologically from there. So, yeah, it's been going for 2 years, and now we are at 1838. Joseph and Sidney Rigdon have been chased out of Kirtland and out of New York and pretty much everywhere. They're in Missouri. It's right before the Missouri Mormon War and the Gallatin Election Day battle and the Battle of Crooked River, right before the Liberty Jail sentence and the extrajudicial tribunal that essentially sentenced Joe to death in 1838. And then a guy said, no, I can't do it because this is cold-blooded murder, and said, let's take him to jail instead. So, there's a lot going on in Mormonism right now. We're still a long ways off from when Joseph actually gets assassinated. But, yeah, that's essentially what I do.
Yeah, I know roughly the story of Mormonism up until Joseph Smith's untimely demise. I read a book not too long ago. It was a murder mystery almost. These two guys murdered Mormon dudes, murdered some lady, I think, and it was intertwined. It was like they were telling the story of them committing the murder, and then it was intertwined with history, the Mormon history was, I can't remember the name of it.
It may have been John Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven. Was that familiar?
That sounds about right, yeah.
That sounds kind of like what it was with the Lafferty brothers, who I think they killed their mom or something to that effect. I haven't read the book, so I don't know yet, but yeah, that book made a big splash when it came out.
Yeah, well, I was in a cult mood because I was reading Scientology. The one the HBO documentary was based on.
Ah, that's a great documentary. Going Clear, I think it's called.
Yeah, the book's even better. So.
No kidding! I didn't even know if it was based off of a book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The book is it's much more in depth. I mean, the documentary is good, but it concentrates more on people talking, which is, of course, for its documentary, so you want to get that kind of the people side of it. But this is more in depth about what they actually did in the book.
That sounds amazing. I got to look into that.
Yeah, check out the book. And then there's another one I read called Inside Scientology, which is another book about science. It's sort of the same thing, but it's not as well known, I think. I was in a kick for a while with that stuff, so.
Right. Well, for some reason, like religious history, I can't get enough of it, and I love seeing the parallels between Scientology and Mormonism, as well as the differences between them. And pretty much any just like cult or religion, you can pick out like so many underlying themes about them, whether it is Mormonism, Scientology, or just the larger base of Christianity in general. Like they all play on the same predispositions that humans have towards credulity. Like they all are con men. They're all swindlers. So yeah, I love seeing those themes that weave together all these different religions.
So, but we're here to talk about something. Since Mormonism is your main gig, but you said you like to talk politics. So, I mean, there's nothing really going on in politics right now. It's kind of dead right now.
No, dude. I mean, especially this past year, it's been fucking nothing. It's
I don't know what the hell we could possibly talk about in that realm, sir. Other than the fact we have a fucking president-elect that's a fucking narcissist. Sociopathic narcissist, probably.
And those are probably his best qualities at this point. Everything else is what makes me even more scared of him.
Yeah, I'm a little scared. I've never, of course. Then again, I don't know that I've been at this point in my life. I think I'm more of a political junkie than I've ever been. Maybe.
No kidding.
When W was around, I still kind of was, but I was still in party phase almost.
Right.
So it's kind of half and half. But right now, I'm like all in, and I just happen to be all in at the wrong fucking time, apparently. So. This scares the living shit out of me.
So. Do you often talk politics on this show? I mean, you're going to have to forgive me. I haven't listened to your show at all, but do you often get into politics?
I had one episode. Well, yeah, I mean, when I do my little pre-ramble before I do the interviews, I'll usually talk about a story. But there was one specifically about, before the election, about the pros and cons of Hillary that we talked about before the election. But I don't, usually it's either more social justice oriented. But then again, politics is intertwined in there too. So I mean, I'm a politically aware guy, so I know what the fuck's going on most of the time.
Well, and the thing, like, politics underlines everything. Like there's you can't get anything done, you can't do anything or be associated with anything in the world without having politics influence it some way. So it's really hard to talk about literally any topic and not get into politics at least a little bit, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, especially when you're talking about things that, like I said, have something to do with social justice, because those things are litigated and there's legal aspects to that, especially when it comes to abortion rights or LGBT rights, and stuff like immigration, stuff like that. All that stuff's social issues, and especially Republican Party seems to love to fucking talk about keeping their hands out of the government, except when it comes to other people's shit, when it comes to fucking social issues, which never made any sense to me.
Right? Like, I love how the idea of the entire platform of the conservative realm is like, less government. Like, there's too much government intervention, but they're like, but we need government to control what religion we are going into, our bodily autonomy if we have a vagina, the amount, the things that we can and cannot learn in school, which I think that's probably a good thing that government controls or has some say in that, and so many other things that they say government should, we should rally against all involve extreme overreach of governmental powers. But yet they say they're the conservative party. I'm sorry, that does not compute with me. It's simply, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, sort of. I mean, it all comes back to when the moral majority under Jerry Falwell decided they were going to, kind of join hands with Reagan in 80. The evangelicals decided they were going to sell their, I should say the Republican Party sold its soul by joining up forces with the evangelicals in 80 when Reagan came in.
But I would say even pointing to a single time or a single decade and saying that this is when it happened, I think that ignores the decade before and the decade before that and before that. Because, Reagan was in the 80s. You go back to the 50s, that's when the religious right was co-opting the government in order to, put "in God we trust" on our governments, and I pledge allegiance to the,
Well, that had more to do with the Red Scare.
True, but still having the religious aspect of that definitely added into it, and just saying that the religion had nothing to do with it, I think that ignores when religion has affected politics, because it's been a constant symbiotic relationship between the two forever, right? Forever.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt that we've always had a puritanical streak in this country.
Right. With Mormonism, I like to pepper things into Mormonism, Mormon history, into current day stuff, because it's relevant all in all. But even Joseph starting up polygamy as a religious tenet, that was only because there were adultery laws in place in some of the places that he had congregations. So if he was in, let's say, Missouri or something, and they found out that he was having sex with more than just his wife, they could arrest him under these adultery laws. So they said, well, polygamy is part of our religious practice, therefore it's okay. But the reason that those adultery laws were put in place in the first place was because of the puritanical Protestant Reformation that took hold of the country in the early, mid 1700s, essentially.
So you just can't get away from Mormonism, can you, Bryce? You can't do it. You can't escape it.
I know, dude. It infects every fucking aspect of my life. It eats up everything I do. I live, eat, and breathe it. But the thing is, seeing these themes run through Mormonism and politics, they've been experiencing the same government at the same time, so they're affected by the same forces. So it's vastly relevant what happens in Mormonism, yesteryear as opposed to what happens today. But Joe. Okay, so let's get away from Mormonism, because
I'm just fucking with you. I don't care. I think it's.
I could jump into it, but dude, we won't talk about anything but Mormonism. So that's why I kind of want to stay away from it and stick with politics. But the religious right, or let's say the religious lobby, has been a massive point, a massive contending force in politics, literally forever, right?
Yeah, I can't think of a time when it wasn't at least it's in the background somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they had more influence in some times more than others, but overall it's always been there in some aspect of our government and our daily life in this country.
Right? Every single day we deal with fucking politics. Whether it's somebody at the bus stop talking about it, or it's you see a campaign billboard for Trump and Pence. It's it's every fucking day that it infects our lives. But I kind of want to go back to talking about what is really conservatism, and what we consider conservatism versus progressivism.
Sure, yeah. I mean, go ahead. Did you have something specific in mind?
Yeah, so we said this a little bit earlier, conservatism, it's always said states' rights, small government. It's always been the advocate for curtailing government overreach, but so much of what they discuss, whether it's women's rights issues or military or whatever, requires big government regulations. Now, myself personally, I think a smaller government is probably better in most aspects. I think that common sense regulations, where they should be, are a great idea. Let's say a carbon tax. That's an absolute necessity that we need to have right now, but we don't. In education, the government's influence on education, I think, is not enough. We need to, like, the Common Core wasn't enough. It's this, like, shitty Band-Aid version of an entire education overhaul that we're in desperate need of to stay competitive in the global market. Like, there's so many points where government overreach is necessary, and government intervention, we have to have it. But for the vast majority of cases, there should be less government in places. Like, I don't think government should legislate on whether or not my girlfriend can have an abortion. I don't think government should legislate on whether or not I can apply for a grant to give money to a voucher school and choose that school over a public system because the voucher school is better. Because I have money. Like, my kids get better education because I have money. That's not fair. Like, there's so many times when government shouldn't interfere, and it does. And there's plenty of times when government doesn't interfere that it should. Like, it seems fucking backwards from where it should be right now. Do you see that as well yourself?
It's this trend towards privatization and the idea that somehow the private industry could do things better.
Fuck that.
Which is complete and utter bullshit, and we're going to see a lot more of that. And the Obama administration, and you're talking about education, they weren't immune. Arnie Duncan was a big proponent of charter schools, which is nothing but an opportunity to financialize our education system in this country.
Yeah.
And I think it's absolutely deplorable, if I'll borrow a word that's been used recently. I hate the idea of it. It ruins basically regular public education. It strips it of the needed resources to operate properly, and a lot of times charter schools do not operate under the same rules and regulations as public schools do, and they often only take they get to pick and choose their students, so they'll take the best ones, but fuck the other ones. We don't want the shitty ones, the kids that. And I read a book by Diane Ravitch, and I forgot the name of it, but it's all about it's all about the history of public schools and how charter schools are basically screwing up everything. She was a former education secretary under H.W. Bush, I think.
No shit.
Yeah. So she knows what she's talking about. It's a really good book.
Exactly. Well, and there's so much argument to be made that charter schools are fucking over so much. So many people, they're taking money out of the government through the voucher system to pay for private companies, private institutions that supposedly educate people. And not oftentimes, but sometimes when we follow the rabbit trail of what these companies are, I don't know if you've seen that John Oliver segment, but they're just shadow companies that a larger umbrella company will, found this school and take applications to it, and in a year or 2 years' time, they will lose their accreditation, or they will dissolve, or whatever the case may be, and those who are enrolled are basically fucked, but the company already got all of the voucher money for those people enrolling, which was paid out of the fucking tax dollars of the American pocketbook. I cannot believe that something like that happens when, a person's education is what is held in the balance. You can pick my pocket, but when you're making my neighbors stupider because of your political motivations, then we got a fucking problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. And and you were talking about conservatism, right? Well, the problem, and I think this goes to a larger issue of why people think there's not a real choice anymore between Democrats and Republicans, is because Democrats have embraced neoliberalism, which, if we're talking as an economic system, it's basically, it's Republican, it's Democrat light, basically, is what it is. Mm-hmm. Or Republican. It's the same, it's basically the shit that was promoted by Clinton when he ran the first time, because Democrats weren't winning. So he decided to start catering to the corporations and the professional class, basically reading from the playbook the Republicans were.
Right.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And it worked, exactly.
Fucking worked. He got elected.
But guess what happened? Fucking, the wage gap has increased, has continued increasing this entire time. Yeah, he had a surplus, but how did he get that fucking surplus? Off the backs of fucking welfare recipients. A lot of it was.
No shit.
He reformed he did pass the welfare reform law, which was a fucking betrayal. I mean, anytime you agree with Newt Gingrich on anything, you gotta have a fucking problem, right? I mean,
right. Well, I thought it was Reagan that really tapped into Social Security and stuff like that, those social programs.
Reagan's more of a symbol. He began that kind of shit because he passed the largest tax cut in history, but then he had to go back 2 years later and basically undo some of it because it was so deep that it was fucking everything up.
Fucking imagine that. Imagine that.
And he actually did some things that were what we would consider progressive because, people don't understand. I mean, there used to be Republicans that were moderate. We used to have this kind of huge split, this huge divide. There used to be liberal Republicans and conservative well, there's always been conservative Democrats, but I mean, it's just it seems like the last 20 years that we've just had this huge gap, this polarization between the two parties, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of way to reconcile it right now. And it's the rise of neoconservatism, and it is the rise of neoliberalism, to me.
Okay, so like I guess I might take issue with some of these labels in and of themselves, because like neoconservatism and neoliberalism in and of themselves seem to be completely mutual contradictory. But I fundamentally disagree with that. The conservative wing, as it is labeled, the grand old party, the Republican movement, I think Republican is probably a better label for it than conservative because they're not conservative. Conservative is simply the wrong word for it. They are progressive in their own way. They like to radically advance their platform as much as possible, as does the Democratic Party. So I would much rather say that they are both progressive in their own directions. Whereas myself, I'm much more of a conservative person. I like to conserve things. I would love to conserve and preserve our environment as much as possible and not just constantly fucking spew poison into the atmosphere. I like to conserve my money. I like to save my money as opposed to going out and spending it as much as possible. I like to be conservation-minded. But if I say that I'm a conservative, it's like, oh, he's a right-winger. He's a Republican. Oh, fuck that guy, right? Because he's not a neoliberal. He's not a progressive. He's a conservative. Fuck that. The Republican Party has been progressive and radically progressive in many aspects in the entire time since its fucking foundation. Since it was no longer called the fucking Democratic Republic Party and the Whig Party. Since the Conservative Party has become the idea of what Republicanism is, conservation has not been at the center of their platform. Simple as that. I love the idea of conservation. I do not like the idea of radicalism. And honestly, there are a lot of people in the liberal movement who are extremely radical that push back harder on the neo-republic or the Republican establishment, and they're pushing against a wall, and the Republican establishment is forced to construct their own wall to combat it with. It's like, if we just fucking tear down these walls and talk about this and intermingle our parties a little bit, maybe we can actually get some shit done instead of screaming into the void constantly, right? So okay, so as long as I've been politically minded and studying politics, I'm 25 now, so that hasn't been very long, I have considered myself a Democrat. But as far as I'm concerned, fuck the Democratic Party, right? They fucking let us down. The Democratic Party in 2016 had the easiest job in the world, and that was not allow Donald Trump to get elected, and they fucking failed at that job. The Democratic Party that cannot raise up a candidate that will get rid of or outshine Donald Trump is not the Democratic Party for me. The Democratic Party that cannot fight this psychotic narcissist, this bigot, the one that is overcome by fucking Donald Trump, is not a party that I want to ally myself with.
I know. I mean...
But if I say I'm a conservative, or if I say I'm a Republican, instantly I'm, let me disconnect myself from this. If somebody says they are a Republican, they are slapped with all of the negative shit that the Republican Party does, and it's like, oh, so you're anti-women's rights? Well, no, because that's not very conservative. If you're anti-women's rights, that's aggressive. That is, that's radical. That's not good. So, oh, you're a conservative, so then you're anti-global warming? You're a global warming skeptic? No, I want to conserve our environment. Therefore, I think that the Conservative Party should take as many measures as possible to conserve the environment. Like so many of these words, like, I have a love affair with the English language. So many of these words have been so drastically maligned and redefined that they don't mean what they're supposed to mean anymore. And I guess that's what I'm most pissed off about, is the cancerous effect that politics has had on the English language, fucked up as it is. You start to take my words out of my mouth and change them into your own definition of what conservative is versus what liberal or radical is. Fuck you. You yourself are part of the problem. You are part of the narrative that shows that we have to operate through a dichotomy instead of working together. I have a huge issue with that.
So I think it's important that we kind of distinguish labels. I mean, of course, you're talking about conservatism. When I talk conservatism, capital usually it's referred to capital C conservatives.
Exactly.
As opposed to conservative, like you're saying, be conservative. Like the dictionary definition of conservative or whatever is basically what you're saying. Small c conservative. But they're not really conservatives, and they haven't been. And
they're radical.
The party has shifted so far right now, and there's still some there, but they're afraid to say anything because it's been taken over by the kind of formerly, I guess, the Tea Party contingent, whatever they're calling themselves now, I don't know. And it's shifted the party so far right that it's threw everything else out of whack, and they feel beholden to it. I mean, Paul Ryan is kissing the ring just like everybody else is.
And like he's got a big goddamn smile on his face the whole time too,
and
right?
He's a fucking Randian fucking disciple. I can't fucking stand him. Him and his boyish look. Fuck him. He's fucking the Antichrist as far as I'm concerned.
Basically what I'm getting is like Paul Ryan killed your children. Is that what I'm getting from you?
I hate people like that. I hate people who act like they're all, I give a shit, when he doesn't give a flying fuck. He will take your shit and not care. He will leave you dying in the gutter, with no food, no money. As long as his fucking principles are satisfied, that's all he cares about.
Right? Exactly. I love how he was so vastly opposed to Trump, and then it's like as soon as he got the nod, as soon as the nomination came through, it's like, oh, well, we'll work with Donald Trump. It's like, you are also part of the problem. If you are accepting of Donald Trump and you yourself as the, let's see, he's not the Senate Majority Leader. What is his fucking title? I can't remember.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House, yes. John Boehner is the Majority Leader, I think.
No, he quit.
No, he quit recently.
John Boehner quit and gave it to Paul Ryan.
Okay, see, yeah, this is why I stick with Mormon history, because it's much more in stone than fucking politics is. But still, like, if the Republican establishment in and of itself was unable to excise Donald Trump as its nomination, everybody that led to the election of Donald Trump in the Republican Party is just as culpable for everything that happens in the next 4 or 8 years as is Paul Ryan. Like Paul Ryan and literally anybody, including fucking Ted Cruz, who was saying that the day that, Donald got the nomination, he was saying you should vote your conscience instead of, well, not instead of, but you should just vote your conscience. Like, even fucking Ted Cruz was making phone calls to raise money for the Trump campaign. Like, every single person is culpable for getting that sadistic piece of shit elected to the Republican Party. Simple as that. Everybody has blood on their hands right now.
Well, they created the monster. I mean,
fucking right. Exactly.
They made the conditions perfect for him, for his rise, basically. I mean, they dog whistled the shit out of this kind of thing for 40 years, basically. You know.
Yeah.
This is
and
not
now,
a surprise.
When somebody comes forward and says all of the shit that they've been saying to themselves in their closed Facebook groups or whatever, somebody actually comes out on the pulpit and says that we should torture the families of terrorists, that we should have a Muslim registry, that we should nuke places, that we should do all of these horribly heinous, disgusting crimes against humanity. It's like, this is what you have been telling or saying to each other for so long, writ large. Now you have to contend with that monster that you've created. I think you said it so well there, Chris, and that was perfectly well said.
Oh, well, I mean, it's been said everywhere. The Frankenstein monster, basically. I read that in another article. It's been a trope ever since his rise or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and we have to, I mean... of course, we have to blame the people who voted for Trump, right? But we also have to look at the Democratic... Well, yeah.
Because there were a lot of safeguards that should never have allowed him to get to the point where he had a fucking pulpit, right? So the people that were voting for it, they were just listening to what this guy said, but there should have been some safeguard way further up the line that never allowed him to get on a pulpit and in front of a TV to even say that shit.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? I mean, you can't, the problem is you can't, by any sort of method, stop him. What do you, I mean, you know?
Well, and that's where I would say, like, the blame game doesn't get us anywhere, right?
Well, it depends who, I mean, I don't know. It depends where you begin the blame game at, I guess. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. It's just a big confusion. I mean, it's at times like this, you're just kind of sitting there going, what the fuck, man? You know, there's so much shit that seemed to fucking just come together in a perfect storm. You know, I mean, the Democratic Party puts up fucking Hillary Clinton. The coronation was already there. You know, they were just waiting to put the crown on her. Bernie Sanders comes by and fucking blows this shit out. But they ignore him. They sabotage him at every fucking point. And I don't care what the fuck anybody says. Wasserman Schultz and fucking Clinton sabotage his fucking ass.
I think, given some of the, I would guess the only way I can phrase it is like the tail between his legs interviews that Bernie has given. I don't think it was just those two. I think there were a lot of people further up the line that were like, Bernie, fucking step down. This is not your time. This is Hillary's time to shine.
I know. I'm not saying it's just them. But as representative as the Democratic establishment, I guess, is what I meant.
Oh, true.
You know, the whole establishment basically want them to fuck off.
Yep.
You know, and they're guilty of the same kind of shit the Republicans. I mean, they both do it. They both just keep going with the same establishment bullshit year after year, you know?
Mm-hmm. And, dude, like, the fucking taste in my mouth as I filled out that little tiny bubble next to Clinton's name. The fucking bile that was surfacing out of my throat. Okay, don't get me wrong. Hillary Clinton has had a very interesting and stalwart track record in many respects, but there have also been a lot of things that she has done wrong. She has been on the wrong side of history of. You can throw out the war in Iraq as one of the typical tropes, but like the entire Clinton administration has been very hard on the war on drugs and on poverty, essentially, in and of itself, and I think that's a larger crime against humanity. And Hillary is, like, she could not have possibly been the best the Democratic Party could find, right? Like, I've considered myself a Democrat, like I said, since I started following politics, but I hated filling out the bubble next to her name. I personally couldn't stand myself for doing it, but I was still doing it because she was better than Donald fucking Trump. So I felt like it was my civic duty to do it. That's
precisely, almost exactly the way I feel. The bile in your throat, you were very poetic there. I love that. I love the imagery, the bile in my throat as I cast that vote. It's almost like Shakespearean and shit. I mean, I loved it. I mean, seriously, but that's the kind I was like, I guess, it's like, hashtag Hillary, I guess, you know? I mean,
like, oh, is there really no better options, Hill Dog? That's the best we can do? Fucking Jill Stein may be a psycho conspiracy theorist, but at least she has some better ideas for, like, carbon taxes and shit like that. Like, there were some third-party people that I didn't do enough research on that I was like, they seem to have better stances on this one thing than Hillary does, but there was not a single fucking candidate on that ballot that I was like, that's my horse, right? That's my horse that I want to win this fucking race. This is who I agree with on everything. That just didn't exist. That person wasn't there.
Nope.
Every single person that was on there, third party or, one of the two major parties, it was like, oh, fuck. I do not like this person for whatever reason. And like reflecting back on this election, okay, the Democratic Party had the easiest job in the world. They just had to make Donald Trump look completely unable to run the country. And somehow they were incapable of doing that. Somehow the Democratic Party was unable to get Donald Trump written away from the record. Like, Donald Trump should have been that person, that crazy third-party candidate that we were like, remember that 2016 election when that crazy billionaire Trump ran? Yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? At least we didn't go to war. At least we didn't set off a whole bunch of nukes. Like, the Democratic Party only had that to do, and they couldn't do it. Whereas the fucking Republican Party rose... What they had to do, the mountain they had to climb, was take this person, Hillary Clinton, who has had a track record of more than half of her life in politics, who has been the Secretary of State, who has held governorships, who has held many points and many positions in government. She's extremely well connected to many political entities. She's an emissary for countries that people will not talk to other politicians. They'll talk to Hillary Clinton. She has this amazing track record, and the Republicans had this monumental task of not getting her elected to the presidency, and they fucking succeeded! Why the fuck am I a member of the Democratic Party when they can't get somebody like Hillary Clinton elected, when I could be a member of the Conservative Party who apparently can get any goddamn person in the world elected? It doesn't matter who they are or what they've done or what they've said or who they've fucked or whose pussy they've grabbed. The Republican Party is able to get them elected to office. That, in and of itself, makes me say, wow, that is powerful. There is something to the Republican Party. So maybe it would do us all a good service to say we are all conservatives. Call me a Republican or not, I don't give a shit. But I'm a conservative in respect of I want to be conservative. And if the Conservative Party is able to win an election of Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, they're able to get elected Donald fucking Trump. Can I say that again? Donald fucking Trump? They can get him elected? What can't they do?
No. Fuck no. I refuse. No.
To call yourself a Republican, right?
Fuck no. Fuck
exactly,
no.
Because the Republican Party is so fucked up, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. But
the Republican Party is only defined by its members. So if I say I'm a Republican and I have these progressive liberal ideas of women's equality, well, not just women's, but racial and women's equality, LGBT equality, less government in many aspects, more government in some places, conserving the environment, conserving water, conserving these limited assets that we have, conserving energy, just because I say that I'm a Republican, does that make me the enemy? Even though we align on every single thing, the only thing is I put an R next to my name instead of a D? Does that make me a bad person?
I don't know. It depends. I mean, you can't say you are one party or the other in this country anyway without taking on all the baggage that goes along with it.
Which is bullshit.
Well, okay. It may or may not be. That's true. But I'm an independent, and I can't think of any instance where I would vote for Republican now just because of the polarization.
Of course. Because the Republican Party is largely made up of people that are hateful, bigoted Christian assholes, right?
Right. I mean,
but if somebody is a member of the Republican Party and they are a progressive, very liberal type of person, just because they don't necessarily fall into the usual dictates of what the Republican Party is, does that mean that they're automatically your enemy because they have an R next to their name?
No, not necessarily. The problem is, however, that party affiliation seems to be more important. Party loyalty is more important than the individual issues a lot of times. Rarely do you see any of them getting out of step because they're afraid they won't get reelected if they do that. That's the problem. I'm sure there are plenty of Republicans that are more liberal that are afraid to say anything because they're going to get primaried out by some fucking Tea Party douchebag.
Right.
I know that's a fact, and the Democrats the same way. They're afraid they're going to get primaried out. But the problem with the Democrats is they're not afraid to get primaried out by fucking anybody on the far left because the far left has nothing. We don't have a Tea Party, equivalent on the left.
No.
There's no, there's no rebellious wing. There's not like whatever they call the Tea Party caucus now, the Liberty Caucus, whatever the fuck they call it. I don't fucking remember. It's always freedom or liberty or some bullshit like that. I don't remember. But we don't have anything. I mean, we've got the Progressive Caucus, but what the fuck? They don't do shit.
Right? Like, as if Tea Party wasn't, patriotic enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have anything. We don't have an equivalent on the left. No. Because everything keeps shifting right. And it just pisses me the fuck off because we get fucked every time. We get taken to the altar and we get fucking dumped every time. Because they don't give a... I mean, Obama even did that. He said, you're going to vote... It's the same thing with black people in the Democratic Party. Well, who else you going to vote for? The fucking Republicans?
Right.
They don't give them a fuck... You don't have a choice but to vote for Democrats. Well, fuck you. It pisses me off.
But we've tried this dichotomy, right? We've tried this two-party system for so goddamn long... And it's had its shining moments. We've created the greatest economy the world has ever seen. We've made ungodly technological advances, to borrow a line from Jeff Daniels. We've done some amazing, incredible things with a two-party system, but I would argue that it has been in spite of that two-party system. We've tried this oppositionary perspective. You don't agree with me, therefore I'm going to fight you to my death. And it doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. So why not abandon the goddamn Democratic Party who can't seem to get fucking shit done? They're worthless, dickless, fuckless pieces of worthless shit at this point, as far as I'm considered. The Democratic Party hasn't done shit at this point. Why not abandon that label altogether and join up with a Republican Party and say, hey, well, you know what? You motherfuckers know how to win. So let's have some nuanced fucking discussions about some of these social justice issues and come to a real perspective of this. I don't want to take over the Republican Party. I want to become part of the party that can win a goddamn election. And then eventually we can work our way into getting the social justice issues into there. But if we keep siding with the party that all it can do is lose, what are we going to do? We're going to fucking keep losing. We're just going to keep losing ground that we have been working for so long on social justice issues, since fucking slavery, since the argument was abolitionist versus non-abolitionist. Since, we have been, the progressivism has been working so hard to get so much done for so long, and we're going to rewind it just because of these cheap labels of Republican and Democrat? No, fuck that. If I call myself a member of the Republican Party, and that makes it so I can win an election, and further these progressive ideas of expanding freedoms to everybody, race and gender and sexual preference ignored? Doesn't that sound like a winning strategy? This opposition doesn't work. Let's work together instead of fucking against each other.
That's not going to happen.
You can say it's not going to happen, and you're right. You're absolutely right. But it's never going to happen if nobody's doing it. It might happen if somebody's doing it.
I just don't see how. I mean, it's all nice in theory to say shit like that, But when you come right down to it, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
Fuck it. I'm making this declaration. December 9th, 2016. I, Bryce Blankenagel, am a conservative. If you want to label me with Republican, sure. If you want to label me with Democratic, sure. I don't give a fuck. But I'm a conservative on social issues. I want things to be... I want government control to be drawn back in so many aspects, and I want it to be expanded in many aspects. Now, these are amorphous declarations, but if anybody wants to fight me on the definition of what is conservatism, of what it is today versus what it should be and what we could make it, take me to task on it. I want to argue with it. I want to come to a proper understanding of what conservatism actually means, because I want to conserve shit. I don't want to keep going radically off the rails like it seems like our fucking entire political game wants to do right now. So call me a Republican, call me a Democrat, it doesn't matter. I'm a conservative. And if that puts me in the camp of Republicans and somehow somebody in the Republican Party changes their perspective because of an argument I can make, I consider that day a win in my book.
I mean, there's issues I think everybody's conservative on. And there are some issues that people are, liberal on. That's a completely different argument to me, though, than the movement, capital C conservatism.
True.
To me, I mean,
but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of things, I guess my point is, these parties are so entrenched, the party system in this country is so firmly entrenched that it's hard. I mean, it's funny if they did like a, you know how they do pick your candidate or whatever, what candidate you side more with or whatever.
I side with or whatever.com. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think people would be surprised if they could vote on issues as opposed to candidates.
Right.
I mean, but the problem is it's a monolith. I mean, the party platform is a monolith, pretty much, or at least in the Republican Party is. What is the saying? Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. Republicans just get in line with whoever the fucking nominee is. So that's a culture that is, that needs to be broken before you can do anything. I mean, it's just one of those. It's the culture is so entrenched. The two-party system is, I don't know how you get to anything else unless you break the entire fucking thing and start all over again. And of course, then we're talking about fucking revolution or some bullshit. I don't know.
No, not necessarily, because it hasn't always been a two-party system. And the two parties that exist today, Republican and Democrat, have only been manufacturing, or have only been manifestations of the 20th century. But before we had Democratic Republicans and Whigs and Federalists, and parties live and die. Parties are not enshrined in the Constitution. The Democratic Party, in my mind, can die. I'm 25. This is the first cycle of elections that I've really followed. The Democratic Party has not done anything for me as a 25-year-old. I want to be part of the party that can win. And I want that party to do what I want. I want it to come to the political agreements that I want. Therefore, I will elect people that may have an R or may have a D next to their name that align with that. But like you said, dude, it's issue voting. It's not person voting. That would revolutionize everything, right?
Yeah, the idea that you would get with a party just because they can win, though, seems sort of, I don't know. I don't know. That just doesn't seem like a good reason to join a party to me.
Well, why be part of a party that always loses? Now,
but they didn't just always lose. I mean, they won they got Obama elected. It's not like, we've been losing for 20 fucking years. We just had 8 years of Obama.
We absolutely have.
Well, I mean, are you talking about the party, or are you talking about a certain ideology? There is a difference.
So I'll talk. Okay, so getting Obama elected, the reason why he won such a landslide victory was because this was a monumental election. This was the first time that we might possibly have a black president. Then we go to the 2012 election with him against Romney. He barely eked out that election because he wasn't novel anymore. And Democrats essentially showed up for the vote and they got him elected, but it wasn't the landslide victory that we expected to see like we had seen in 2008. The problem that I see is like the Democratic Party for so long, like you said it with the Clinton administration, that's when we see it really start to manifest. They've been aligning with the very people who have been trying to fuck over the little guy forever. Right? They've been co-opted by the people who don't give a fuck about me or my socioeconomic demographic. They don't care about the people that make less than $50,000 a year. They don't give a fuck about somebody with black skin. They don't care if a woman has a baby at 17 years old and therefore she is destined to have a life of restricted opportunities from that point. They don't give a fuck. And those same people that have been co-opting the Republican Party have been co-opting the Democratic Party. And like you said, we saw it manifest in Bill Clinton. And since then, the Democratic Party has been fucking over the populace just as much as the Republican Party for whatever reasons. For money. That's what it is. Just for fucking money. Those may be platitudes and they may be overgeneralizations, but as I see it, a 25-year-old white guy, I'm privileged. I'm getting fucked over. I can't imagine what it must be like to be like a transgender, gay, black woman in the world. Like, I cannot fucking imagine how hard they have it.
So what's the solution?
Cooperation. Cooperation. Instead of fighting, talking with each other. Okay.
You talking about the two parties trying to get together and try to come to some kind of compromise? Is that what you mean?
That would be absolutely great. But then it's like who, right? Who out of what parties is going to be the representative who, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, these sort of things usually start with a couple of brave souls, a couple of rebels, you know?
Well, and I mean, even like declaring independence from Britain was a minority movement. It was less than 30% of the populace that wanted to defect. The vast majority of everybody else were loyalists, but it took that vocal minority to effect change. That shouldn't be that hard to do now. Today, in the age where communication is lightning fast, it shouldn't be that hard to jump across the divide between Democrat and Republican and say, let's build a goddamn bridge here and actually talk, instead of just screaming past each other, instead of just butting heads and constantly fighting. But you can't do that by saying, you are the representative Democrat, you are the representative Republican, you get together in a room and come out holding hands and kissing at the end. Like, we can't do that. That's just not going to happen. So what better way to do that than jumping onto the other side and bringing people over, and having Republicans from that side jump to the Democrats and pulling people over and saying, we share the human experience together. All of us are pissed off at a lot of the same things, but just because a person is standing up and shouting, let's build a wall because the Mexicans are our problems, that's not going to solve the actual issues. Us getting together and coming to a consensus will solve the fucking problems.
I guess. I mean,
in theory.
Yeah, of course, in theory. But I mean, nobody's going to play kumbaya right now anyway, because they just have this. They think they have a mandate, and there's just too much of a divide. Now, I get what you're saying, like you say, in theory, right?
Right.
And I understand the sentiment, and I wouldn't, of course. Everybody wants, I think, compromise to some extent, but there are certain things I don't think you can compromise on, and that includes human rights, you know. And I'm talking about transgender rights, LGBT rights, women's rights, you know.
So instead of couching it that way, why not talk the language that Republicans will respond to? Hey, do you want bigger government or smaller government? Do you think the government should have any say as to what bathroom I can go into? Or does that sound like a big government democratic idea? I guarantee you they'll run away from it when it's sold as a big government tactic.
I don't think it matters.
I think it does.
No. They won on bigotry. That's how they fucking won. Okay, let's just be honest about this. I mean, the numbers bear it out. I mean, it's not because of poor white people, because poor white people voted for Hillary, and middle-class white people voted for Trump. So it's not about the money so much, I don't think. I think they played those dog whistles to the point where people, I mean, I thought initially maybe it was these poor white people basically coming out and because they thought Hillary was going to take their job. I don't fucking know. They thought Trump was going to bring it. I don't think it is. I think a lot of it is a backlash or a white lash, I've heard it called. I mean, I honestly think because white people are becoming the minority and I think that did play a role in it. And how are you going to overcome that kind of, visceral feeling of bigotry? I mean, this fear people have of the other. How do you overcome that? I mean,
I guess. So I talked about this in my previous discussion a little bit, but it's like when we see like psycho radicals picketing a Planned Parenthood with a banner that shows something that they sell as an aborted fetus that's covered in blood and looks like flesh mangled, and these people that are picketing and trying to defund Planned Parenthood, they have been sold the narrative that Planned Parenthood is their enemy. When in reality, Planned Parenthood only, maybe 5% or whatever of their actual services involve abortions. Everything else is preventative measures, birth control, education, non-abstinence only education. I mean, actual putting forward ideals that will reduce the level or the rate of abortion. But the Republican Party has been sold the narrative that Planned Parenthood is their enemy because they are killing babies. There's so much stupid about that argument that it takes hours to deconstruct, but it only takes one line to assert that and have people believe it. So if people are sold the narrative, if the Republican Party is made up vastly of people that hate the government and want smaller government, if you sell them the narrative that abortion control is big government and gay marriage or polygamy or whatever, those are big government ideals, vote against them, I have no question in my mind that they could be co-opted to vote against those typically Republican and conservative ideals. It's just a matter of how you sell the product, how you motivate these people to vote in their own best interest, whether they know it or not.
You expect them to start voting in their best interest now? They haven't been doing it for the last fucking 40 years.
I disagree with you. Everybody only votes in their own best interests, but the people that sell them those best interests don't have their best interests in mind. They're sold a false narrative and they vote for somebody because they think this will be the best person for me, right?
Okay.
That's why I voted for Hillary. Like, I would love to get a cheap or free college education. And for so many other things that are part of the Democratic Party. That's why I voted for the Democratic Party. That's why I voted for Clinton. But I did it in my own self-interest. I did it because that was the narrative that the Democratic Party sold to me. And I think everybody that voted for Trump, that filled out the bubble next to Trump Pence, did the same thing. They were voting in their own best interest.
Oh, okay. No. It's not. It's a false equivalency. Because we know there's a difference between low information voters, as they're so charitably called, and people what the fuck they're selling. It's not, I don't want to, of course that sounds elitist, I guess. Well, fuck it, I don't fucking care. We fucking know shit. We know what's going on. They keep voting for people who have demonstrably kept fucking them for this long. Basically, on social issues, they keep pulling it in with social issues. They pull a bait and switch and fuck them on fiscal issues every fucking time.
Do you think that's only the Republican Party that does that?
No, I didn't say they were the only ones doing it. Good. I'm saying they're the only ones that seem to fucking buy it year after fucking year.
Do you call yourself a Democrat?
No, I'm an independent.
Okay, good. I consider myself independent as well. You slap whatever label you want, but I call myself independent and nuanced in so many respects because the Democrat or the Republican label just doesn't sum it up. It leaves so much to assumption when each and every issue that is voted on is so nuanced in and of itself.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I know what you're saying. It's just, I don't know what we do. I don't know how we get to the point where you want to get to. I don't see how that works.
It seems like this insurmountable task, right?
Well, yeah. In our system.
Only because we've never done it in our lifetime. And okay, so if something seems like a big task, but the fucking fate of the world, to be poetic again, rests in the balance, isn't it worth fucking working for that? Isn't that something worth fighting for? Like, every person that you know that is gay or is black or is destined to be disenfranchised somehow in the next 4 or 8 years, fighting for them, even if it's a brutal, ugly fight, is worth it. Am I right in saying that?
Okay, yeah.
So sure. Even if it requires a lot of work and a lot of frustration and a lot of talking to people that we don't agree with, that we normally would have a screaming argument with, even if all of those things are necessary, every single one of those possibilities is better than like some crazy armed uprising or some, massive upheaval of the government or something, right?
Okay, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so why not work for it? And it starts in the theory.
It's not going to, I'm not going to compromise on human fucking rights. I'm not going to do it.
You shouldn't have to.
That's my point, though.
You don't have to.
What, really? Because most of the policies they're putting forth seem to be directly affecting people who like I said, LGBT community, poor people, women. These policies, they're like Social Security, they're talking about fucking cutting it, talking about privatizing Medicare, talking about, getting rid of ACA, which is problematic, but fuck, what the fuck did we have before? We're talking about limiting women's rights, I'm sure. Roe v. Wade is going to be challenged in some kind of way. Probably won't get repealed.
Because it's a Supreme Court decision. The executive party has no control over that.
But they've got control over fucking appointing Supreme Court. And at least one, they're going to get one. Because Scalia, what's his name, died. Yeah. And they have an open seat. So they're going to get one at least.
It's true. Absolutely true.
I don't know. What incentive do they have to negotiate from a place of power? They have both houses of Congress. Exactly. They have the presidency.
Exactly.
They don't have any incentive to negotiate. Why would they?
Why would you want to negotiate with these people when we could become part of them and co-opt the party for actual conservative ideals? For actually conserving the power of government when it comes to LGBT rights, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to poverty. Like, conserve government control in those respects. Government should not be able to control whether or not I have an abortion, right?
No.
So the time to negotiate is always when you're from a point of power, right? That's when you have the most leverage. So why would we try and fight against them when we have absolutely no leverage, when we can offer any possible compromise and they can still say, no, that doesn't sound good to me, come back with a better deal, when that's not going to get us anywhere? That will only get us somewhere to the right of middle. That will never actually get us to progress any direction.
Okay. You have to fight. We just give up? I'm not giving
up. I'm saying new strategy. Fighting has been the entire idea of a dual party system for so long. Fighting has not gotten us anywhere. It's not a matter of fighting. Standing up for something, that's different than fighting for something. If you stand up for something for your own belief, I think that's great. As long as your belief can be challenged and you have something to back it up, great. It should be in the public discourse and you have a point to say. You have a place to speak, a seat at the table. But if an entire party has been winning so much, and that's a platform that they ran on, was I win, and they won, well, I want to be part of the party that is able to win, And let's get it so they win in the right direction. Let's get it so the Conservative Party progresses in the correct direction instead of screaming at each other all the time. Am I crazy to think that this could actually happen?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm talking in absolute nothing but theory, but it's like, if we don't start talking about something like this, we're always just going to be yelling at each other.
I guess. I mean, like I said, in theory, it sounds great. I just don't know how, I don't know how it happens.
Yeah, well, very simply, getting rid of the Electoral College would be a very massive step towards it.
I would love to get rid of the Electoral College, trust me.
And everybody says that. Every politician says that. Every person that elects for the Electoral College says that. Nobody likes this system, but because we've been doing it for so long, it's like, yeah, we'll just keep using it. We'll just keep throwing Band-Aids on it and duct tape. Eventually, it'll get us through this year's election. Maybe we'll take care of it next election cycle, but it'll get us through this one. Like, when the time to talk about these issues is now, okay? The Republican Party just won, okay? The Electoral College just got somebody elected to office that was not the popular nomination. The time to talk about these issues is not in 4 years when this becomes an issue again. The time to talk is now. The time to delineate between party lines was 6 months ago. Now that no longer applies. Like, we're living, some call this the post-truth world. Yeah. I think that's beautiful because it seems so relevant and perfectly descriptive of what is everything that is a Trump world. But like, if we're living in this world, let's live in a post-democratic and Republican world. Let's embrace this and say, okay, we really fucked up with Trump in 2016, and there were a lot of factors that played into getting him elected. What can we do to never let that shit happen ever again? Ever again? Because we cannot fuck ourselves this hard constantly and expect we'll come out on the other side intact ever again. We cannot handle a Trump. And we're only beginning it. We're only at the very start. We don't know what is in store for us, and we can't handle it.
I know. It's a scary time.
Right. Let's have this conversation now. If I am going to consider myself an independent and ally with the Conservative Party because I like conservative ideals, not Republican ideals, because they've been co-opted to be anti-social justice, but conservative, conserving things, I love that idea. I want to have that conversation now. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about people calling themselves independent and bridging the gap that has become the dichotomy between Republican and Democrat because it's not working in the current system.
Well, it's certainly something to think about. I mean, I don't think anybody has any great ideas right now. We're kind of at a low point, so.
Right, and I'm willing to talk to anybody that wants to discuss these issues because I think these are bigger social issues and the solution is not the bipartisan system. It's not worked for us now. Let's abandon it. Let's start a conversation about how to fix this.
Okay, well, I mean, I think conversations are always good as long as they're productive.
Yeah, it's hard to make that happen though, right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, this whole time we've been talking about this election that has happened, and like, I think the vast majority of social topics you and I agree on. I bet that we would be very hard strained to find a fundamental disagreement between ourselves. But like, don't these seem like conversations worth having with everybody at this point?
I don't begrudge having a conversation necessarily with anybody, as long as they come to the table with an open mind and willing to compromise. But a lot of people aren't willing to do that. That's the problem, I think.
That's fair. And maybe compromise. I like the idea cooperate more than compromise, because it's like compromise, everybody's losing something. But that's just how politics work. I understand that. But like, cooperation is going to get us a lot further than just compromising, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, but I understand there's also like a lot of these black and white issues that aren't necessarily, they don't have a compromise point, right?
Yeah, either you want human rights or you don't. I mean, that's just me. Yeah. That's just me. That's just the way I look at it,
Yeah, that's fair. But conservatives say, I'm for human rights because I want to preserve all those babies that are getting killed. They're for human rights in their own aspect too. In their own mind, they are correct, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do something unless they thought they were right.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, we're all humans. We all live in the same plane of existence. We all experience it in different ways, but we all still live here. We all deal with the same politics and politicians. We all are part of the same country and government. We all experience the same emotions. We all think that we are our own heroes and that we are right in whatever it is, whatever perspective or stance we hold. Let's find out why. Let's all be on the right side of right instead of being, as seems so crucial in many of these social justice aspects, being on the wrong side of what is right. Like, it doesn't seem that hard. Like, only because we've been in this bipartisan dichotomy for so long, it's like, we've been doing it this way. That's how it should be, or that's how it has to stay because it's that way. I fundamentally disagree with that.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't like it either, and it needs to change somehow. I just really don't.
And saying, oh, if only we would have gotten Bernie in the office, saying that would have been the solution? No, that's just ignorance. That's simply ignorant. Things would have been better, don't get me wrong, but saying that getting the right president into office, that can sometimes do amazing things, but it's never the solution. You know, getting a majority on the Supreme Court, that's not the solution, but it can get a lot of things done, right? Like, there's never the solution. It's just a matter of, like, working together, or, like, figuring out these problems and selling them so everybody is on the right side of history.
It's a worthy goal. I don't disagree. I hope you're right. I hope there's some way we can come to that point where we can have these conversations.
Yeah, right. Me too. Like, I'm 25. I feel so pessimistic after this election cycle. Dude, like, fuck. If this is the world we've come to, like, what went wrong and when that led us to this point today?
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. That's a whole different conversation.
It would take many more than just a single podcast to discuss.
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of leave it at that then, I think.
Right. Good call.
You know, basically, we need to find compromise some kind of way. I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know or cooperation, however you want to term it.
Yeah.
We need to do something soon because this country's falling around our ears, basically, or it seems that way.
Yeah.
All right, Bryce.
So well said, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I hate to leave everybody on a pessimistic note, but I didn't mean it to be that way. I want this to be more of a soapbox about optimism for the future. Like, okay, we got fucked over in this election. Let's lick our wounds and move forward. Let's stop looking at what happened and start looking to the future and the solutions we can hammer out ahead of us instead of pissing and moaning about how fucked up this whole election was.
I know. I mean, some people aren't like that, I guess. I'm more of a pessimist. I'll go ahead and tell you. So I'm not
as well, man. It takes work to think positively. It fucking sucks.
I know. But that's what we have guys like you around here for. So.
All right, optimism. Woo! Check out Naked Mormonism.
That's right. Come check out Naked Mormonism for some naked positivity. That didn't work quite well. I was trying to...
naked positivity. I think this can be like a new kind of Kama Sutra type of theology. I like this.
That's funny.
Positive. I might have to steal that term from you. I like it.
Ahead,
Thank you very much, Chris.
Why don't you tell everybody where they can find your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. Facebook or Twitter, search Naked Mormonism. You can find me there, or any podcatcher that you find typical podcasts on. I'm on some of them, a lot of them. I don't know, a few of them. Naked Mormonism. That's my show, the Serial Mormon History Podcast, and I keep it apolitical. We kind of introduced this discussion by saying that I try to stay out of politics. So I can be kind of a safe haven for people that are sick of hearing about politics and just want to hear about, a completely novel concept. That's where you can find me and escape the realm of this flaming ball of shit that is currently our political system. So yeah.
Well, anytime you want to let off some steam about your, the political situation, I'm sure it'll get worse before it gets better. Just let me know, and the forum's always here if you need it. So.
Likewise, dude, Chris, thank you very much. And I'm sorry if you feel like I totally hijacked this conversation.
Dude, no,
that's went off and ranted. But dude, it felt good, and I don't get to do it very often. So, god damn it feels good. And I'm gonna keep drinking for tonight. It's gonna be a great night.
All right, man.
Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Chris.
Yeah, me too, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
All right, take it easy. That'll do it for this episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Bryce Blankenagel for coming on and talking to me. We had fun, I thought, and there was some passion involved, so that's always good. Of course, as always, you can come check out the show at podunkpolymath.com. The music is done by ... You can check out their music, cdbaby.com/cd/... The link to their Facebook page is also on the About page, as well as links to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google+. The email is podunk.polymath@gmail.com. If you want to become part of the posse on Patreon, patreon.com/thepodunkpolymath. There's a call-in phone number for voicemails at 615-378-POPO-7676, which stands for freedom. And then, of course, I've just added this to the page. You can always fail to mention this, which is why I put it up there so I wouldn't forget. The Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse, which is a close Facebook group, which you can ask to join. That's at facebook.com/group/the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse. All the words separated by periods, but of course you can just look it up on Facebook and become part of that. It's growing a little bit, so you get on the action. Become a member of the group and talk about all kinds of cool stuff. Of course, on the page, on the About page, you can follow there's a button for following the podcast on WordPress, Twitter. There's tweets there. If you want to donate via PayPal, there's a button. Subscribe on RSS, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. All those buttons are there as well. Of course, the Patreon button is there too. Recent posts, recent comments, and all that good stuff. So, hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I hope y'all's New Year was okay, and I hope we get through this shit next year and next 4 years. Relatively unscathed, but I am dubious. So anyway, until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?